I just want to tell you what a treat it is to be here and how thrilled PFLAG is to be a part of this conversation. PFLAG is Parents, Families, and Allies working with the LGBT community to move equality forward. And I'm here to share with you my story, my personal journey. Essentially, I'm going to be talking about parenting, family, resiliency, and gender, all hot topics, right? So the first thing we're going to do, I know for many of you I'm preaching to the choir, but the first thing we're going to do is get on the same page around a couple of terms, and I apologize for those who can't see it, but I'll explain them to you. The first is assigned sex, and this is what is put on our birth certificate, and this is determined by either the sonogram, as most of us are too impatient to wait, or the doctor literally looking at our child and making a determination to say this child is a male or a female. The next term is something called gender identity, and this happens between our ears, and this is an innate sense of who we are. And if you think about it, as humans, we do our gender work very young, right around ages 2 and 3, when children are playing dress up, they're choosing their toys, they're choosing their clothing, their hairstyle, and their imaginary play. They say, I'm going to be a mommy when I grow up, or a daddy. They're deciding they like pink and sparkly, or camo, or both, right? Or trucks, or Princess Barbies, or both. This is when they're doing their gender work and figuring things out. Gender expression is essentially how we wear our gender, right? I have a girlfriend I grew up with. We were both horrible tomboys. And she had a daughter who would not leave the house without her ruffled socks and patent leather shoes and the biggest dress with the crinoline. And she's like, I don't know where this kid came from, right? That kid's gender expression was ultra feminine, right? And our gender expression can be in one of those boxes, right? Really macho, really feminine, or it can be really anywhere on the spectrum. And our romantic orientation, just for the record, we're PFLAG. We're a lot of parents. We're not comfortable talking about our children's sexual anything. So in our world, it's a romantic orientation. That's about who we love, right? That's on the outside, okay? So we've got 4 more terms, and then we'll get to the storytelling, right? Just so we're all on the same page. A trans girl or a trans woman is someone who was assigned male back in that birth room or in that sonogram, but who identifies in her head, she understands herself to be a woman. A trans boy or a trans man was someone whose sex was assigned female, but he knows himself to be male. Transgender is someone whose assigned sex does not agree with their internal sense of their own gender. And cisgender is when it does agree, okay? So, I'm a cisgender mom of a transgender girl, and this is my story. I had the happiest baby you ever saw. You heard of Betty Davis eyes? This kid has Barack Obama ears, right? This kid, I wanted a boy. I bonded with my dad over baseball. I wanted to bond with my son over baseball. I was so excited when that sonogram told me I had a boy. It quickly became apparent, however, that this was not the boy I anticipated. This child liked all things pink and sparkly. At one point, at the age of 3, he said to me, Mommy, something went wrong in your belly. I was supposed to be a girl. Now, as I go on to tell this story, my only defense is that my child was born in 1993 and there was no Google, okay? I couldn't get online and type those words in and see what I had. So what I did is I did the 1993 equivalent. I went to a psychologist, a child psychologist, my husband and I did, because we didn't know what to do with that. And the psychologist told us to encourage boy play and discourage girl play. If you think about that, really what it sums up doing is it ends up shaming a child. But I didn't know that then. So we even went so far as to sign the kid up as a bonding experience with Dad to toughen him up for karate. That didn't go over too well. That is as angry looking a little face as you're ever going to get. My husband was thrilled. He went on to get his black belt. He's a guy, did tour in the Marines, right? So at age 6, my child said to me, Mommy, I'm going to get a real gun and kill myself. Now, I didn't know 6-year-old children understood what suicide was, much less ever considered it as an option for themselves. I was horrified. This was my beloved baby. I was obviously doing something wrong, and I had no idea what that was. So I went back to the psychologists, and I went to a child psychiatrist at the time. My husband and I did. And she told us that our child had anxiety and depression, and she helped us understand how to parent a 6-year-old with anxiety and depression. And she told us that our child would likely be gay, which was fine. My husband and I actually met on stage, which is a whole other fun story. We got gay. We understood that. That was cool. But we were very concerned the kid would get bullied because he was so effeminate. And she never said anything about gender. So we continued to discourage or disallow girl things and encourage and only allow boy things. And our child went to a very dark place. He hated my husband and I, and we could not figure out why. One day in his room, I found a family picture of us where he had taken push pins, and he had pushed those push pins through my eyes and my husband's eyes. And I thought, my God, I thought that was something only abused children would do. I didn't understand. So this kid would ruin every family outing we had, and my husband and I just couldn't figure it out. We thought we were pretty laid-back, liberal parents on everything except that gender thing. We had no idea how big a thing that gender thing really is. So my child attempted suicide twice. My child became a cutter, and my child went under started self-medicating at a young age. My kid lived online. Every avatar was female. And of course, we still didn't understand what we had or what we were doing. And we were in therapy this whole time. At the age of 5, by then my kid had come out to us as being attracted to boys. By the age of 15, I'm sorry, he didn't come out at 5 as being attracted to boys, sorry. The age of 15, he had come out as being attracted to boys, and we said, you know, as a coming of age, you can move your bedroom from upstairs into the basement. And I gave up on the whole gender police thing I had been doing. I said, you can decorate it any way you want. Well, I was gifted at that time with the pinkest, pom-pommiest basement in all of Howard County. The walls are the colors of a Victoria's Secret bag. There are pom-poms around the bed, beads around the closet. Hello Kitty is liberally dispersed throughout. There's even a mirror that has pink velvet around it and a button that you push and it says, "You're so beautiful." In the middle of this painting fest, my child said to me, I have the best of both worlds. I'm a woman on the inside and a man on the outside. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know what it meant. They promised me this was a phase. They told me this was a phase. It was something my child would outgrow. And here we were with him 15 years old still talking this way. We got in an argument and I yelled at my child and I said, you can be as gay as you want, but if you go trans on me, it's on your own time and your own money and out of my house. It was about 4 weeks later. I was sitting in a car wash in Howard County, Center Park Drive. I remember it exactly. I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but when you're car wash, it's like the equivalent of being back in the womb, right? You're surrounded by water. There's nothing going on. Nothing. My ADD couldn't distract me anywhere, right? I'm just sitting there in the womb, listening to Ira Glass on This American Life and that wonderfully mesmeric voice he has, right? And he's talking about transgender children. And he's interviewing a 6-year-old trans girl. You'll recall that this was someone who had been identified male at birth but knew herself to be a girl. And that little girl said, yes, something went wrong in my mother's belly. I was supposed to be a girl. And then I heard an interview with a 47-year-old trans woman who had just transitioned who said, for many years I thought I had the best of both worlds. I was a man on the outside and a woman on the inside. Well, you know how God used to speak through burning bushes? She's upgraded her communications channels. She now puts you in a womb-like atmosphere and gives you your child's words back at you so you can hear them in appropriate context. So I went home and I said to my husband, oh my God, I just heard about this thing and I just slammed the door shut really hard on my kid, like on William Thomas Hyde Gallucci. How's that for a male name? I just slammed the door on Will 4 weeks ago on this very topic. I have to reopen it. We have to figure this out. I can't believe what I'm hearing. And my husband said, absolutely, honey, you reopen that conversation. I'm going to the Masons meeting. Bye. And off he went to the Masons meeting. So I called up Will from the girl cave. That's what we'd taken to calling it. And Will comes upstairs and I said, do you still feel like a girl on the inside and a guy on the outside? Well, let me share with you, my child is not stupid. He wasn't about to take that bait and get yelled at again, right? So he says, no, why? And I said, well, I just learned about these things called puberty blockers, and I commit to you, if you want them, I will get them for you. I understand they can pause time, and we can figure this out as a family and do what needs to be done. Are you interested? And he said, no, can I go back downstairs? And I said, heavens, yes. I congratulated myself for being a great mom, patted myself on the back for dodging that bullet, and I think I poured a martini. And 2 hours later, he came upstairs and said, Mommy, I want those things that pause time. They were the top thing on his 15-year-old Christmas list. So I went out to find puberty blockers. I called my pediatrician, who said, Catherine, I know nothing about this. He called the head of the pediatric endocrinology at the University of Maryland Medical System, who said that child needs to be treated by a team. My pediatrician said, great, where should I send the mom? And the head of pediatric endocrinology at the time, I don't know who's there now, don't want to badmouth anybody, said, I don't know, and hung up the phone. Didn't say, let me research this, didn't say, let me help you figure this out, but hung up the phone. This is what I call the ook factor around trans. It frightens people, we don't understand it, it makes mothers scream horrible things at their children, and it makes professionals turn away and say, as hospitals have said to us, I don't want to be known as the hospital that treats those people. Okay, that's what the kind of prejudice and inappropriate behavior that we deal with. So I went on a journey calling therapist after therapist. I knew I needed an endocrinologist, and I knew I needed a therapist. And I knew I needed someone who was willing to treat a trans child. And I think I spent months in the parking lot of the big box stores throughout Howard County talking to therapist after therapist. One would not have any more room on his caseload. One had just moved to Florida. One didn't treat children, and it went on and on. And the reason I was in my car in the big box parking lots was because I was crying the whole time, because I was frightened, and I wasn't finding help, and I didn't want my baby to see how hard it was for me, because it was hard enough for her. Finally, through PFLAG, not through PFLAG, but finally I found a provider in Rockville. So we're driving an hour south for a therapist who had once treated a trans woman 18 years ago. And then we were driving an hour north above Bel Air to I think this guy had to be 85-year-old endocrinologist who was willing to treat my child. And I would leave and I would pray that he would live to continue treating my child, because that was all I had. Finally, through PFLAG, I found our local federally qualified healthcare center. Nate, raise a hand. Chase Brexton. Rock on, Chase Brexton. Finally, I could take my child to a place where they not only understood trans people, they understood trans children, and they had wraparound care. So, and they've come a long way since then as well. So with that, I became an incredible ally. PFLAG, Chase Brexton, NPR, they will forever, ever, ever have my loyalty. They saved my life and my family, I think. So I kind of went from tears to advocacy, right? At the end of that year, I decided no other parent was going to sit alone in a big box parking lot crying because she didn't know who to turn to. And I started doing radio interviews and newspaper interviews. And I started a support group through PFLAG for parents of trans kids. And that was 6 years ago. The first year I was in the big box store parking lot. Remember that part. 6 years ago. And since then, I have 198 parents on my. So back to the story of my child's evolution. During this time, my sister gave me the best advice ever given to anyone about a child. She said, you take that child where she can see herself. So I went to Baltimore Pride Festival, and my child goes traipsing right up to the drag stage and says, I want to do that. I did the Homer Simpson reaction, right? No! Out of all the trans people in all the world, you want to associate with the single most ridiculed subsection of that small contention, right? So I said, you can't do that, you know. You have to like do something for a living. You know, my husband and I both really were big on education, so you got to go to school. So the kid graduated high school. I'm like, you got to go to Towson. I don't want to go. You got to go. I sent this kid to Towson for a year. She flunked out both semesters, and that really got through to me because that's a lot of money. And so that you would think by this time I had figured out this kid was not living my dream, right? You would think that that had come through, but it hadn't. So I said, you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan to get out of my basement. What are you going to do, right? She said, I want to go to beauty school. So she went to Paul Mitchell in Frederick County, the Temple of Paul Mitchell Partner School, and she got her degree. So going back a little bit, for her 17th birthday, before she graduated high school, I found this ad in the paper. Some of you may be aware of this, for a drag brunch in Adams Morgan at a restaurant called Perry's. So I thought, okay, that's going to be G-rated. This will be something the kid will enjoy for her birthday. So I said, you know, somebody once said to me, you know, Catherine, I don't think you have a natural parenting instinct. I think they're right. I do better with adults. So I said, kid, for your 17th birthday, grab your girlfriend, get in your best drag, we're going to a drag show. So we traipse off to Perry's, and they're doing a drag show, and the MC is calling people up who are celebrating their birthday. So my Will goes traipsing up there in her best drag, and the MC looks at her and says, good Lord, child, don't you go outside at night, they will rape you. And she says, what's your name? And Will says, William. And she goes, William? She said, where is your mother and what is she thinking letting you out of the house like that? And I'm in the audience taking pictures. I'm like, that's me, I'm the mom. So Will says, I want to be a drag queen. And she says, oh, well, I'll take you backstage and introduce you to the other women after the show. So we go sit down at the table. She finishes her show, and she comes up. She says, where's that little person who wants to be a drag queen? Will pops up and goes traipsing after her. I pop right up and go traipsing after Will. And she's like, oh, Mom is coming too? And I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. In my head, it was going to be cocaine and sex back there. That's what was going on. That's what I had to protect my child from. Well, of course, what it was 3 entertainers stuffed into the corners of the back stairs of a restaurant trying to get dressed and do their numbers. And those 3 entertainers ended up being incredible family for my child. They invited her to do a number. The kid earned $52 in tips in 3 minutes. They disabused me of the idea that you cannot do that for a living, because they were all doing it for a pretty darn good living and had been for many years. And they ended up inviting my child back once a month as a guest performer. She went by Whitney Gucci Goo, the baby of the bunch. That's her in all her glory. She loves it. They finally put her on as a part of the permanent cast. So one day, every Sunday, if you want to go to Perry's and Adams Morgan, my kid will be there. And she works full-time as a cosmetician. So she works 4 days a week and then goes to drag and earns more there than she does with her hair business, which is fine and grand. She pays taxes on it, I tell you, because my father was a prosecuting attorney for the IRS. And you don't have a choice when you come from that bloodline, right? So it's great. Let's get moving away from that. This is her high school portrait. This is a fun story. We went to take the high school portrait, and everyone else is getting their mailed to them, and mailed to them. Mine's not coming, and it finally occurred to me. I called them up and I said, this is Catherine Hyde. I'm William Gallucci's mom. Yes, that beautiful young girl is William Gallucci. Please send me my pictures. I left that on voicemail. I had the photos 3 days later. They had just gotten confused, right? They were certain this had to be a mistake. So, she has moved out of the house. She is almost off the payroll, not completely self-supportive. She has a boyfriend. She's dating a guy who considers himself straight. I have no idea how that works. Again, PFLAG, we don't want to know these things. And I have to pause here a moment and say that we're very blessed, because at the age of 15, after being shamed and bullied and denied who you really are in your own home for 13 years, you have every right to say the heck with you, Mom and Dad. You may want to get on board now, but I'm done, right? My kid didn't. She stuck with us. Now, I don't want to sugarcoat this. You all can imagine the amount of anger and distrust and hurt and hate that was floating around my family before we figured out who our child really was. 7 years later, we are still growing and healing as a family, but we are blessed that my child stuck with us, and my kid taught me unconditional love. For the first time ever this past summer, my kid chose to spend a vacation week with her dad and me. And I said to my husband, it's just like a normal family. It was so exciting. Okay, we tell, people ask how we're doing, and I say we're in the best place ever since the gender wars began. Those many years ago, right? We really love each other unconditionally as a family, and we have each other's backs. I'm going to tell a real quick story here because it's important. Then we're going to play a really super fast game and move on. I'm going to tell you the story of my husband and my gender journey. If you think about this, we all have a gender journey. Most of us don't have to give it any thought, though, because we fit into prescribed boxes or regions within society. But we all do have gender stories, so I encourage you to think of your own. Getting my electronics mixed up here. There we are. I'm going to start with me, little tomboy here, want to play baseball, right? I was born in 1958. I hate to admit that, but the cultural context is excruciatingly important. If you had said to me at the age of 6, Catherine, we made a mistake, you're really a boy, my response would have been, yippee skippy! I knew 3 things at the age of 6. I knew my dad had more power in the house than my mother did, right? I knew me and my sisters had far more chores than my brothers did. And I knew I could have been ball boy at Memorial Stadium, which was the height of my 6-year-old ambition. It's still my dream. If anyone knows anybody in the Orioles, I want to be ball girl for a day. Okay. So that was my dream. I grew up, I went through puberty, I became comfortable in my body. The world exploded for women and opportunity while I was growing up. I understood that women do have their own kind of power, right? So I became comfortable as a woman. I only put on makeup for today for you guys, though. I never do it for anybody else. My kid did my hair for me before I came, because I don't do that stuff either. But I became comfortable as a woman, right? My husband, on the other hand, darling little guy who did a tour in the Marines, came out playing soldier, right? If you had said to him, John, you're really a girl, his reaction would not have been yippee skippy. It would have been, ew, cooties, yuck, yuck. He is all boy, 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 right? Very comfortable in that boy box, always has been. So I take the time to tell the story because I want to make a point that some people are a little bit gender fluid, like I am. A little bit kind of fluid, right? Some people are far more fluid than I am. Some people don't feel like they're either in either box or on either place on that spectrum. Some people feel like they're both, like my kid had said to me, I have the best of both worlds. And then some people are gender clear, like my husband, who has no doubts. This woman I work with, I said to her one day, I said, well, you're very comfortable in that girl box of yours, aren't you? She's like, oh yeah. Oh yeah, total girl. She probably wore the ruffle socks and the patent leather when she was little, right? The reason I spend time on this is we have to remember that even our trans children are gender clear and gender fluid, right? Trans people are not a cohort. Like one wonderful woman said, one wonderful doctor who treats trans people said, if you met one trans person, you met one trans person. All of the great, beautiful, incredible diversity of personalities and spectrum and expressions that we have as a whole cohort of people exist in this very small section of trans people. So this has a difference. Some of our kids don't realize their gender identity until they're older because they're a little bit more fluid. It's not a big deal. Lots of our trans girls don't realize, lots of our trans boys don't realize they identify as male until they hit puberty. Because the whole time, I mean, when they were growing up, they could have said to their mom, Mom, I'm really a boy. And Mom would have said, oh, sweetie, you don't need to be a boy. You can be anything you want, right? But the moment a boy puts on a tutu, the whole place, like that E.F. Hutton commercial, right? When E.F. Hutton speaks, there's a tutu on a boy, right? So that's why I say that. So the last thing we're going to do real quickly, and I hope you can see this, is play a little game we call plotting yourself on the gender spectrum. And if you're interested in printing this out and taking it to Thanksgiving dinner, it would be a hoot. You can find it on our website, pflagmd.org, under training resources, or under resources, training resources. So we talked about these 4 things are different, right? Our sex assigned at birth, our gender identity, our gender expression, and our romantic attraction. So I love to start with my husband since he's not here to defend himself, right? So, and don't get waylaid by the labels. You can use pretty much any label here. It's just a concept. So he was identified male. His gender identity is somewhere between man and macho. His gender expression is pretty much between male and macho, not, really it's just male, it's not macho at all. His attraction, I'm hoping it's to sporty women, because if it's to feminine women, he missed the mark, right? So he clusters over here on one pole. If we plot me, I was identified female, my gender identity, I'm a bit of an advocate, so I go with hear me roar. That also gives away my age, right? Does everyone know what I mean by that? I do that at universities, and they're like, what's that mean, Miss Hyde? My gender expression is like between female and androgynous. Ideally, I would live in jeans and bare feet and a t-shirt if I could. And my romantic attraction is it's got to have a little bit of macho. I wouldn't have married a former Marine, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. So I cluster on the other side, right? If we plot my kid, assigned male, gender identity woman, gender expression feminine, this kid would have been in the ruffled socks and the patent leather. She's a drag queen diva, right? And romantic attraction is to sensitive men. So if you walk away with one point from this whole talk today, if you have children, especially if you're thinking about having children, I want you to put the idea in your head that there's a SWAT machine arm on the side of this. And when you pull that, your child can land anywhere on any one of those spectrums, right? Most of us cluster. Here's the big deal. Bring it home. Some of us don't. That's the big lesson. That's it. Thank you very, very much for your time.